All right, welcome to the Imperfect Leader Podcast. I'm Scott Neal, your host. Today, I have the honor of sitting down with my friend Blair Proffit and getting to know her a little bit. Really excited about you guys getting to know more about her and following her on social media and also following her in her journey in life as she continues to move on toward more and more success. So Blair, welcome to the Imperfect Leader Podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
And I'm glad you said yes. I've been wanting to interview you for quite a while and get to know you a little bit better, and also for our audience to hear more of your story. So let's jump in a little bit to who you are, because many of the people listening to this have no clue who Blair Proffit is. There'll be a few that do know who you are, but tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe your family. Where's home? How'd you get to Elizabeth City? Just kind of give us a little background.
Sure. So I moved to Elizabeth City because my husband was in the United States Coast Guard, and he just recently got out a few weeks ago. So that's a very new thing.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, so we're excited. Change is crazy sometimes, but we're excited. But we are originally from Boone, North Carolina.
Okay.
And he is actually my high school sweetheart. So we've known each other for a very long time. And he, we went to college and did all of that stuff, and then he decided to join the Coast Guard several years later. But we now have 3 children. My oldest is 7. I have a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So,
So your hands are full.
Yes. So things are a little crazy, but it's a good crazy. But yes, we have lived in Elizabeth City for the last 5 years, but the military had moved us around a few times, but home is originally the mountains of North Carolina.
Oh, yeah. And I bet the mountains are beautiful right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm very biased. That's my favorite place on earth.
I can imagine. Well, we're recording this in mid-November, so I can only imagine how pretty Boone is. And have they already had some snow?
They have. They've had 1 snow so far.
Now, did they receive a lot of snow in Boone?
Yes, a significant amount. From now until March, there will be a lot of snow.
Yeah, so it's the chances of having a white Christmas there in Boone's pretty high.
Very high, yes.
Great. Well, I can imagine. I mean, this is the beach area, so it's a big difference. And hopefully you've kind of fallen in somewhat love with the beach.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be hard. We're so used to having the beach, and so whenever we move back one day, it's, we'll probably
Well, then you'll look forward to coming back to the beach and visiting.
Exactly.
Well, good. I hope you come this way so you can come back and be a part of our lives as you vacation.
Absolutely will.
Well, the reason that I wanted to sit down with you and interview you is because you are an executive national vice president at Arbonne. Well, that is an amazing journey I know that you've taken to get to your position. Tell us a little bit, because some of the people listening have no clue really what Arbonne is. So tell us, what's Arbonne, exactly what is your position, what do you do, and then how did you get from where you were to where you are today? Give us a little overview of your journey.
Sure. So we were actually stationed in New Orleans, Louisiana, at the time when I was introduced to this company. And if I'm being totally honest with you, I wasn't super open-minded when I was first introduced. But to sum it up, it is a health and wellness company. But we were founded in Switzerland, but it's now an American-made company. And I had a really, really good friend that I went to college with. I actually lived with her. She was my roommate. She was my bridesmaid at my wedding. So we were very, very good friends. And she had started with this company and reached out to me. What's interesting about that is I was working in corporate America at the time, had no interest of branching off and doing anything different. But basically, with the military and moving, my job kept having to change. And I was introduced to this, started using the products because I was trying to be a nice friend and be polite, if I'm being honest. But I saw a difference, and then I also saw a little bit of success. And we decided that we wanted to start a family. And because of that reason and that reason alone, I think is the only reason I was open-minded. So because I think the idea of being an entrepreneur and not having to clock in, clock out, like really doing it on my own was very intimidating. So I saw the appealing factor, but I think I kind of knew what it would take, and it was a little scary. So I basically decided to do it just in hopes that it would work a little bit, but I didn't have aspirations to do it long term.
Okay, so you were thinking, hey, I'll give it a shot. Maybe I can make some extra money on the side.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Was there anything that your friends said that sparked your interest, or you really did it just to kind of be a nice friend and say, okay, fine, I'll try?
Yeah, well, initially it was the nice friend part.
Yeah.
But when I saw her just being a little bit successful, and I'll be honest, I was in a position in my job where I didn't see any more promotions or anything else happening. I was stuck where I was. It is what it is. And I honestly got to the point where my true deep down desire in my heart was to be a little bit more present as a mom, and my current job wasn't going to allow that. And so for me, it was the time factor. I think that's really what I was looking for was, okay, if I did a business where I was my own entrepreneur and was able to make my schedule, then maybe I could kind of weave this around my life instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
And so that was really the time was the thing I was looking for the most. But I didn't see how financially it would provide long-term time. I thought short-term time.
Sure.
So I basically decided to do this, but, God has a sense of humor. And 2 months after deciding to do this, and I was still working full time at the time, so I was kind of doing both, which we needed the extra money. We found out we were expecting our first child. So I had to get a little bit more serious, a little bit faster than I was anticipating. But thankfully, because of that, because I think anytime you have like a time frame where you're like, okay, I have to meet a goal by a certain time, it kind of pushes you more so than if you have all the time in the world, right? So I knew I needed to replace my full-time income by the time I had this baby if I wanted to leave that corporate job and be the present mom that I wanted to be. So I was able to do that. And I'm a procrastinator.
So you were able to replace your current salary at that time.
Correct.
And how long did it take you to do that?
So I started in December of 2011, and I was able to replace my full-time salary by October of 2012.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and it surprised me.
That's unusual though, correct?
Yeah. I mean, there have definitely been people that have done it faster than me, and there are people who have done it significantly slower.
Right.
So, but for me, that felt very fast.
Sure.
And so there were a lot of doors that opened up, and to be fully transparent, it felt kind of simple when I first started. Like, things were happening, doors were opening, I was working. But I will say it got a little bit harder when that baby came into the picture. And I had to, rearrange and figure out how to do that as a new mom and navigating all of that as well. But yeah, so within, less than a year, I was able to replace my full-time income. And I've literally been doing just this business since that day.
That's amazing. And how did you have just a lot of friends that you were able to introduce the product to, or was it because of moving around you had a lot of connections, or your family? I'm just wondering if someone's listening going, well, I've been thinking about getting into Arbonne. How can I do that? I mean, is that a little...
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And I wish I could say that all of my friends were super excited and everybody jumped on board, but that wasn't the case. What's interesting to me is I found it was all, for me, to grow was all about networking.
Okay.
And finding people and finding a need for people and then getting introduced to their networks as well. I grew in what, in business they call a cold market, which always intimidated me in every other position I was in any other company. But with this, I found a difference in my own health and my own life. And so I just genuinely started sharing that. And found that people were looking for the same thing, whether it was, financial or their health reasons, whatever it was. But what's interesting is I totally expected my closest friends and family to be like fully on board immediately. And it honestly shocked me when they weren't, because I thought they would definitely see what I saw from the beginning, and they didn't. And so truly, the first whole year was mainly growing within people in New Orleans and people away from home. Maybe some of my coworkers for sure that I worked with in New Orleans that probably disliked their job as much as I did, and so on and so forth. But I wasn't able to grow, I feel like, in my warm market until years later.
Now, do you consider yourself an extrovert, introvert? Was it easy for you to just go out and start making friends and networking? Or?
No. Okay. So I would definitely, it's funny. I think today people would say I'm an extrovert, but when I started this business, I was definitely more an introvert. And so I will say that's something that I've had to grow towards, and it was unintentional growth. It just naturally happened. But, what's interesting is I feel like when there's a need and there's something that pushes you, you force yourself out of that comfort zone. And what I realized more and more is every time I got out of that comfort zone, I saw growth. And I would just take baby steps. And then I would retreat and go back, and then I would start back and do baby steps again. But it's funny. I think maybe because, my husband and I are from the same town, we had a core group of friends that, even in the military, I remember when we first moved to our first station, I was like, we don't need new friends. We have friends. They're at home, but we got plenty of friends. And so going out and making new social circles wasn't a desire of mine. I wasn't looking for it. And I realized that, my quality of life increased significantly when I did that, when I did get connected with new communities and new people.
So you see yourself as almost a different person today than you were when you began.
I do. Yeah.
Now, what your position again at Arbonne, what do you do today versus what you did then? Like, how has that changed? Do you do the same thing, or are you into coaching now, ones that are coming up, or how? Tell me a little bit about that.
There are definitely some similarities. Like the basics are the same.
Okay.
As far as when I am just talking to anyone, sharing with them about my business, it's the exact same from when I started. However, because I've been able to teach and train so many other people how to do this business, there is a whole lot more teaching involved than there was at the beginning. And certainly training. And now I'm in the position where, I am in charge of retreats and functions and, party planning and all these different things that was also not something that I ever saw myself doing. But it's fun because we enjoy our community, we enjoy the environment, but it's weird being the person that organizes all of that.
Right.
So a lot of that is part of where I spend my time as well.
Now, Arbonne lends to a community. I mean, it sounds like you've got friends within Arbonne.
Oh, yeah.
That you do life and kind of share life with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got back from a leadership retreat in Oklahoma. And I used to, in the beginning of my business, see these things as taking me away from, my family, my kids, and didn't see the value in it. But now every time I go, I've learned, you learn so much from other leaders, from other people who have been through trials and things and are in this with you. And it's amazing that I have a community of people that have no benefit to my business whatsoever other than the friendship and just learning from each other. And we were just there for 48 hours. It was a short retreat, but it was all national vice presidents within Arbonne. That are in, an organization that I'm with. And it's amazing how when you get with like-minded people, how much that can grow you even in 48 hours. It was crazy. I was stressed with different things and the transition out of the Coast Guard and, different things going on at home. And so I thought, gosh, I don't have time to go do this for 2 days and maybe I should cancel. And when I got back, I realized I was like, you kind of need those.
Yep.
You need those breaks and you need sometimes just to get refocused.
Yeah. At what point over the last 9 years, I guess you've been in and out, 8-9 years, did it become clear that this was going to be my life? Like, I'm going to do this? Because, I mean, you didn't have your eyes, I don't assume, set on becoming executive national vice president. I mean, it happened, but from just the little bit that I know about you, it wasn't something that you began with, I'm going to become national vice president.
Definitely not.
It just kind of soared.
Right.
And at some point, though, you went, this is it. This has changed our life.
Yep.
And we're going to stay in this as long as we possibly can, right?
Yep.
Was that a few years ago or what?
Well, yeah. How my business works is, as your organization grows, your income grows based on your percentage because, we're a health and wellness business and that's the dynamics of that. However, like I said, that first year I was doing pretty good. So I think I got a little confident, probably too confident. And then I got really comfortable in where I was. And like I said, I had that brand new baby and I actually ended up finding out that we were going to have our second child pretty quickly right after because my first two are only 17 months apart. Okay. And so I feel like those first few years in Arbonne, it was a lot of balancing new mom life, my husband's schedule, moving. He started aviation school, which brought us here in Elizabeth City. And so there were a lot of changes. And something that's interesting, and I learned from one of my mentors in my business, is that you have to recognize you're either in, let's see, I want to mess this up. It's either blaming mode, justifying mode, or growing mode. And I realized with those first few years, I was either in blaming or I was justifying a lot. I never quit working. I was always doing it consistently because, in all honesty, we needed that income. We needed that just to, get by because we're both at the beginning stages of our businesses and so our careers. And so the justifying and the blaming is something that I had to recognize in myself. And I feel like that's where a lot of people in any aspect of life, there's always an excuse and a reason to put something down and to stop. And when she said that, it really hit me. And I thought, gosh, I haven't been growing. And as a result of that, because I kind of just stayed stagnant. I just did the minimal of like what you had to do to just keep the income I had already built, basically. I had two incredible leaders in my organization that bypassed my pay, my percentage. And so their businesses were growing bigger than mine. And it was definitely a big shot to my confidence, where I'd been so confident those first couple years. And so that's when I got, I think, into the blaming mode. And when I finally recognized that, and it was great because when I moved here to Elizabeth City, I knew absolutely no one. Literally, we didn't know a single soul. So, it was just like when we moved to New Orleans, but it was different this time because I had already built this business and I had two young kids. So it wasn't like I went straight into a corporate job. And so I realized the important factor of me wanting to naturally retreat and just stay at home and be with my people. I had to go out and meet people if I wanted to continue doing this. And so I got plugged into the community here, which has helped my life in so many ways, way much outside of business. I mean, every aspect. I think it's made me a better wife. I think it's made me a better mom, getting plugged into, mom groups, a Bible study, going to the gym, and just having a community where you see the same people every day at the local YMCA. I mean, different things like that. Church, obviously. Like all these different aspects built a community here where we started to build a home here. But then I felt confident in, and I felt like I could approach people and share with them what the gift that I found in my life confidently because they knew me and they knew that I was being real and genuine. And so slowly but surely, I kind of got back into that growing mode, and I stopped blaming and I stopped justifying, and I was able to promote again to a level that we call regional vice president that I never saw possible. And that was a big significant jump for us. And I think that every little step that you make produces confidence to go towards the next step. Yeah. But national vice president was still not in my radar. That still seemed way, way far out of the box of the realm of possibility. But incredible thing happened was when you kind of just let go and let God and just keep doing what you're doing and kind of have tunnel vision and focus on, what is good and what you're capable of. It's you can kind of turn around and you can't believe what's happened. Like the last 2 years, especially in my business, from year to year, the amount that we've grown is unexplainable, in my opinion. I can't really explain it. Like I look at that and how I feel and what I believe is that that's only God. Yeah. And looking at it, it's just, I read this book called Go-Giver by Bob Berg, and it shifted everything because I was always in a position where I felt like I didn't want people to think I was asking something of them. I felt I don't see myself as quote unquote a salesperson, even though I knew what I was doing was a good thing. I knew it could help people. I would retreat behind what made me uncomfortable. And when I read that book, it shifted where it was like, so much more about what you give and value is so much more than what you receive in payment. I remember him saying that book. And so there was something of value that I could give people. And when I focused on that versus my paycheck and what we needed personally, because that was my focus, very much so for the first few years, I think that was a huge shift for growth in my business.
That's great. Wow, those three places: the blaming, the justifying, the growing. I mean, we could talk about that for a long time because I just looking at that and thinking through as you were talking, most people who are in a blaming mode or a justifying mode can't see it. It almost takes someone to point it out, because you really believe you have reasons you're not growing. And, you justify why you're stuck. You justify why things aren't working for you. And you truly believe that people are holding you back. So you're blaming them. And it almost takes someone, and I believe you said a mentor of yours or a friend of yours pointed that out, or it was in a leadership conference you heard that. And it kind of awakened you to that. It takes almost an outside person to go, hello, you're in justifying mode. You're in blaming mode. So that's good for any business, any church, or just a person in their life, just personal growth. And it's so easy to point fingers and say, well, I'm where I am because of you, or I'm where I am because of these if I had that person's life, of course I could be successful.
Right.
It's all the blaming and justifying. I've heard it said before that, the greatest enemy of tomorrow's success is yesterday's success. And we get so used to what we had that we don't see any more room for growth,
Oh my gosh, so
and
true.
we get so comfortable with our income or comfortable with, what we've accomplished that we just use it and we just kind of get so, accustomed to it. We don't dream anything greater.
Right.
So someone had to wake you up to that. So this has not
Yeah.
been just an easy ride for you.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not
I
at
was
all.
going to ask you kind of
Yeah.
what's one of the greatest obstacles, but it almost sounds like you answered that. And that was just getting you situated and sorted
Yes.
and kind of balanced and figuring out how this works.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too, because I think that a huge aspect that I was missing, and I think this obviously to grow a business, but I think in marriage, being a mom, being a friend, anything, the self-development aspect was missing because I don't know why, but for some reason growing up, I always thought that was hokey. I thought, reading these self-development books and these things, I saw no value in it. And yes, I think you should be cautious and pay attention to what you read, of course, but it's good to read.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I would get an excuse, well, I've got young kids. I don't have time to sit down and read. But there's a little thing called audiobooks,
Yeah.
And so I
Becoming more and more popular, by the way.
they really,
Yeah.
I literally, thank you, Jesus, for those, because I will get in my car and listen to an audiobook, which, by the way, is a great way for your kids to take a nap. And so I will listen to them, and I realized, just having quiet time every day, growing personally changed every aspect of my life, but it allowed me to get, that head trash out and got me out of the blaming and the justifying and recognizing, I needed to grow and I needed to change.
Because when you sit and talk with people or interview people, it's one of the things I love about doing this podcast is just sitting down and just getting into the head of someone else and saying, tell me what you're learning, where you're growing. When you read a book or listen to a book or whatever, most of the time you're listening to someone who is in a growing mode, or they've gone through the justifying mode, blaming mode, and are now writing a book about growing. You begin to see yourself in that, and they call you out.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're
Exactly.
sitting there reading this book, and they call out your excuses, and they highlight your attitude that stinks. And you put the book down sometimes in this sense of, wow, I've been found out. And then you begin to grow. And then as you grow, then you're capable of handling more responsibilities. You're capable of
Absolutely.
handling more weight and accomplishing more things. So self-development's huge.
Oh my gosh. Just you saying that, I'm like, I can't believe now where I am, that would have been so intimidating to me several years ago, where now I feel capable,
Yeah.
but I also don't feel like I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
continuing to grow, but every day, because
Do you
we
guys
all are.
have like a library of books you guys share in
We do,
Arbonne? Okay.
absolutely. And I don't know the other people that are in my organization with me. I gift books all the time. I don't know how much they love it, but they need it.
Yeah.
Because it's books that I've read that I thought, gosh, this just was a game changer for me. It
Yeah.
just shifted everything.
Yep.
And so I give books all the
That's
time
great.
and share
It's
them.
one of the best books. One of the best gifts you can give is a book.
Absolutely.
I remember listening to Rick Warren. He's pastor of Saddleback Church in California years ago, and he said there's never been a slump in his life he's not been able to read himself out of.
Oh, gosh,
and
that's
I thought that
powerful.
is so insightful, and I didn't even appreciate it as much then as I do now. But people walk in my office and I have all these books. They're like, why do you have all these books? And I'm saying, you have no idea what these books mean to me. These books have led me out of depression. They have led me through self-development. They have called me out on a variety of things. These are like the voices that constantly call out to me. And, I can literally go and pick a book up and look at the book and remember a time in my life. It's like a memory. I remember, 10 years ago when I was
Totally
going
relate
through
to that.
this or that. And this was the book that helped get me through that. I even have books in my office where the other day I picked up one and I was flipping through and I saw some handwriting of Ashlyn or Cameron inside. They scribbled because I was reading a book when they were 3 or 4 and they scribbled.
Also relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one day those books, because your children are so young.
Right.
But man, when you look back and they're 25 and they're 30 and you pick a book up and you see their handwriting in it and the book will mean something, plus your kids were a part of that. Books to me are just precious, and I have a lot of books now on Kindle. I've probably got like 600 books I think I have in electronic. but there is nothing like a
Holding
real
that
book.
book.
Yeah. It's got marks in it, and I can,
So
fold
true.
down the pages, and it's got coffee stains in it, and it's got marks in it, because that's been through war with me. It has literally led me out of so many different things and answer questions that I had. So I'm a book connoisseur, and if I spend $15 on a book, even if the book wasn't per se, phenomenal or life-changing. Look, if I have one question that I've battled to answer, and I find the answer in that book, just one, it's worth $15.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
the stress over trying to find the answer to this question or whatever. So, hey, one sentence, one paragraph out of a book to me is worth it. That is the cheapest therapy you're ever going to find is a $15 book.
Totally agree.
So it's good. Well, how did you manage this stress with your family and kids? You spoke a little bit to it, but
Yeah.
you still even have how young is your child now, your youngest one?
She'll be 2 in December.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you still got, your oldest is
7. She
7.
just turned 7.
All right,
Yeah.
So 3 from 7 to 2. And you've gone on this journey. You've
Yeah.
traveled. You've gone to South America with us.
Yes.
To Ecuador a few
Yes.
years
Yep.
ago. All of this. Your husband in the Coast Guard. How did you figure out time to, if you cook? I don't know, but to
Right.
cook or to clean
No,
and
I
to
actually love cooking.
Okay. How do you do all of that? Somebody's out there going, "Oh, I would love to do that, but how am I going to manage that
Yeah.
with my kids?"
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. And that was another gut check for me, was recognizing that, we all have 24 hours in a day, and time is precious.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend it and waste it on things all the time. And so there were little tweaks that I had to make where, not scrolling through my phone and checking out Facebook for hours, not sitting at night and binge watching on Netflix. Not that I'm saying that's bad, but
Sure.
I'm saying it wasn't serving it wasn't benefiting me in any way in life, because we'd be exhausted as young parents. And when we got the kids in bed, I'm like, I want to just check out. But I realized, this seems like a little simple thing, but I am a procrastinator at heart. I will put something off and off and off and off.
So that's been something you've had to battle the whole time.
That absolutely.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have a handwritten calendar, because I think vision is important for me to write things down. And every single night, I literally sit there with a to-do list, checklist for the next day. And just, nothing crazy, but it's just little things to do for my business. If we have appointments, if there's something going on with my husband, whatever it is. And I write down a checklist, and the next day I sit there and I have, and I'll be honest, I take advantage of, the YMCA free daycare.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go work out, or maybe I'll have an hour where I'll just sit there and get some work done. So I just navigate little pockets of time. But I do better if I have a list and I just knock out what I need to do. And if something happens in life, because, every day looks different, I'd simply move it to the next day. But once I'm done with work, I put it down. Because a factor for me was the reason I got into this and decided to be, an independent business person, was to have more time with my family. And what I found is sometimes I was getting off balance, where I was so focused mentally thinking about this all the time that I wasn't checked in when I needed to be. And there were sometimes where I was too checked in and not doing anything for my business. And so that's going to be a constant battle, I think. But recognizing, put your phone down, put your work down, and then go be present with your family. And so, now it looks different because I have 2 kids in school and 1 at home now. So it's like that looks a little different. So I try to get a lot accomplished before they get out of school and things like that. So when they get home from school and they, we do homework and we hang out and I cook dinner and take them to their activities. I feel like life is constantly changing. And so I've just had to weave it around whatever my life looks like, basically.
Yeah. When you mentioned about putting your phone down, I think most of us would probably be surprised at how much time we waste on things like phone or Facebook
Absolutely.
or Instagram.
I was so guilty of it.
You interview people and ask them, how much time do you think you spend, on social media? They typically always way underestimate what they actually do. An hour will go by and it felt like just a few minutes because you get lost in the hole, of all these people's posts. And in 1 hour, what could have been read in an hour, or what project could have been completed, or how many phone calls could have been made in networking, and in that 1 hour a day over a 7-day period, that's 7 hours. It's a full day's worth of work that is literally just given away to nothing but surfing online
Yep.
or binge watching something, and you literally consume an entire season, in a few days. And at the end of it, you're not really any better than you were. You were
exactly
entertained
what I had
for
to
a little
recognize.
while.
Yes.
Yeah, but you don't. So a lot of people who say I don't have time, it's just they don't even see that they do have time,
Right.
but they're just not using it very wisely.
Exactly.
And that's an ongoing issue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something you have to check yourself every day.
Now, in your position, I assume that you get an opportunity to speak with some ones who are some Arbonne consultants. I'm not sure the right word.
Right.
A consultant that's up and coming, and you get a chance to do a little coaching, teaching
all the time.
Here's my question for that. I imagine that there are many, probably a lot more, who begin and do not continue. They try, and it doesn't work out for them, or they haven't been able to find their niche. Among those who quit, do you find a theme? What do you find is probably the most difficult thing for them? Is it the time management? Is it the networking? What do you find is kind of a theme among the people who just give up so quickly?
I would definitely say, 99% of the time, it was they didn't give it enough time. Because that's where, when there were times in my business where I thought, okay, no, I've given it up. It's just, I feel like right before something huge happens is when people kind of throw in the towel. And I was so close to doing that so many times. And it's interesting, and I think reading has helped with this a lot, but you hear about people who are successful in life, and it's kind of like, they're doing all these small things that nobody was seeing behind the scenes, and they're never going to get credit for, and the world's never going to see. And then they have these massive impacts on the world, and then they're going to be remembered forever, but nobody saw.
And people assume they were an overnight success.
Exactly. Yeah. And so a lot of times when I'm talking to somebody who's just getting started, I can tell, they may not say it out loud, sometimes they do, but I can tell they think, well, gosh, yeah, it's easy for you to do this. It's easy for you to go out and share and, be confident in this because you're successful. But they didn't know me when I wasn't. And so, and I remember thinking that too. I remember looking at the people who are successful and thinking, well, gosh, yeah, must be nice, because that's a natural thing to think. But you have to recognize everybody starts at the same place. And you have to give it enough time, and you have to kind of go through the hard. And something I shared, we have a big conference every year, it's a global conference. So all the different countries come together, and they asked me to speak this year, which is a very intimidating thing, but a huge honor. And they said, what's the one message you want to get across? And what I was thinking was, my brand new people that are just getting started, that haven't gone through anything yet, that don't know what's coming. I remember I saw this in a book that I was reading, and it was a quote about a stonecutter. And it said, you see the stonecutter hammering away at a rock perhaps 100 times without as much as a crack showing in it. Except at the 101st blow, it'll split in two. And it wasn't that blow that did it, but all that had gone before.
So good.
And that, to me, was when I was in one of those dark places in my business where I felt like a failure, where I felt like I was at a standstill. When I saw that, I thought, gosh, I've been hammering away at this for years. And honestly, I think what it came down to was, okay, if I give up now, what would I be giving up what's possible versus, what felt hard in that moment? And so I think giving up what was possible, having that vision. There's a book by Andy Stanley called Visioneering.
Yeah.
Love that book.
Great book.
And it was powerful. And so you have to have a clear vision, and giving up what was possible was scarier than pushing past the hard. It got to that point in the business for me to where I just decided to push past the hard.
Yeah. And I assume you had a very supportive husband.
Very, yes.
Yeah, because I can imagine that would have
Super
been a
important.
Completely different story for you.
Yes.
Had your husband
Absolutely.
been just, what are you doing?
Oh my
Why don't you
gosh.
quit? Give
Oh my
up.
gosh, yes.
And unfortunately, there are people who have to deal with that. So speak a little bit about his support.
Yeah,
Give him a
no,
little credit
he
on
deserves
his-
a lot of
yeah.
credit. And I know everybody needs somebody
Sure.
in their life. And my husband is a very honest person, and I respect him for that, but he does not hold back at all. And I love him for it, but there's definitely times that I find it annoying, But I remember one of the really hard times, I remember him looking at me and saying, hey, you have to get some perspective here. I distinctly remember this is when he was actually away for 6 months. I had a brand new baby. Sawyer so I had Landry and Sawyer that were 1 and 0, and he was away for 6 months. And it was a very hard time in the business. It was absolutely the time that I felt like I was done. And he said, listen, look at all you've accomplished. Why would you throw it in now just because you don't like the scenario you're in? Like, you've already accomplished so much. Like, nothing bad is happening. You're just not where you want to be yet. It doesn't make any sense for you to throw it in, and for us, it came down to, okay, you can go back because financially you can go back to doing what you're doing before, or you could stick this out and keep pushing. And it was a reality check where I was like, he's right. I'm just mad it's not happening fast enough for me. And so he's definitely had moments. And I think men in particular are not as emotional as women. And there's sometimes that I would get very emotionally attached, and it's hard not to goals and visions and things like that. But he would always kind of bring me back to reality and remind me what I've already accomplished and to be proud of that and to recognize that continuing is always worth it.
That's great. Well, Blair, speak to the young lady, the young man, older person out there who's listening, and they've got a dream inside them. And it might not be for Arbonne. And in fact, the chances are pretty high it's not going to be for that. But it could be literally to start a restaurant, or maybe a small bookstore, or whatever, maybe just a business from home, and they're feeling somewhat discouraged, and they're thinking, wow, there's so many great success stories out there, but I probably won't be one of those. What are some next steps for them? Or maybe a book that you could recommend, or here's a few things to keep in mind. What would you say to them? They're driving down the road, listening to this podcast right now, going to a job that they don't like. They wish they could get out of it and start that dream. What would you say to them if you were riding in the car with them right now?
Well, I just thought of a book, of course, right? We said that was Dare to Dream, Work to Win.
Okay.
Can't remember the author, but it's really good.
Dare to Dream, Work to Win. Okay.
Because I think people are afraid to dream. I think that they're afraid to do anything that's out of the box, because I was certainly one of them, And I think that, you only live, we have one life. You have one opportunity to, do something great, right? And so many times I think the biggest obstacle that people have to overcome is they worry about what other people think, and they worry about the failure, not because of the failure, I don't believe. I think because they are afraid what people will think if they fail. And so, I had to stop worrying about what other people think, and for me, focus on what God thought. Am I doing all I can to have an impact in this world? Am I really big? And there's a big difference between bringing in a big income and having an impact. You can bring in a huge income and have zero impact in this world. And I think there's just little things, like if you were opening a restaurant, think about the impact you can have with your staff, with serving food that may be, introducing to people. Whatever it is, if you have a desire in your heart, I don't think that there's a mistake that you have that desire. And I think God knows the desires of your heart, and you should absolutely pursue them. And I just think that the biggest obstacle is overcoming what people think of you and worrying about that failure, when most of the time, to get success, to get to where you want to be, you're going to fail. And you have to recognize failure is inevitable, but you have to go through those steps in order to get to where you need to be.
You've noticed that change in you because you began with going, I just want to replace my income.
Oh yeah.
Right. So when you said when they introduced Arbonne to you, you weren't thinking have an impact on the world, right? You were just thinking, how do I replace this, be able to stay home with my family? So the impact you were wanting to make was basically in your checking account.
100%.
Right. And just in your in the Proffit home.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you've grown to become now, obviously being able to make decent money, being able to take care of your family, things like that is a nice thing. But you sound like someone who's come to the place where you really have more of a joy in the overall impact you have in other people's lives.
100%.
Yeah.
And it is funny because, my degree is actually in fashion merchandising, which has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing right now. And I always joke, but it's the God's honest truth. The reason I did that was because I wanted to shop for a living.
Right.
There was no logic behind it. And so I picked a degree and I did that, and I worked in that industry, but I job hopped for a decade, all through my 20s. I was never satisfied at any job, and I would go to the next job. And I looked at everything as a job.
Yeah.
And I didn't find anything, or I didn't even really think about there needing to be a reason to find joy in what you're doing. It was just a job just to earn a paycheck and pay your bills and get by. Like, that's just what you did. And I think because, especially starting your own business and doing this, it forced me to grow as a person, and it forced me to see things totally different and recognize what, I had a pastor, the one who actually married my husband and I, and he used to always say, and it didn't mean much to me back then, by the way, but he used to always say, we're blessed to bless others.
Yeah.
And I thought he meant tithing, which obviously is true.
Yeah.
But I realized that's in every aspect of your life. If you can bless people with your gifts and, what you're capable of, you bless others. And so, like I said, you can bring in a good income, but if you're not blessing people, you're not, and passing on that gift, there's no impact. And so I had to realize too, and that was another shift for me, was it wasn't about my paycheck. It was about, hey, I actually have the opportunity to help other people who might be stuck. Like, I have what I need to get by, but there's still other people who don't have what they need. So I could help them. Yeah. And so that's why it doesn't matter how successful I am in this business. I'm going to continue doing that because there's still people that are going to be exactly where I was, and I was looking for something like this. I just didn't know it existed until somebody shared it with me.
Yeah, it's great. Well, you still have a long way to go. You're young. You still got your young family. So, there are places still to go and things to accomplish. So, one of my favorite authors in leadership is John Maxwell, and he talks about the leadership lid, and it's something that my wife Lynn and I have talked about a lot. Just, where's our lid? What's holding us back? How do we lift the lid? So a question for you, and we're going to turn this a little bit lighter in just a moment, but I'm curious, do you see a lid right now in your life, a current leadership issue that you're working through? It could still be time management. It could be family. It could be, more new relationships you're trying to build. I'm just curious, where's Blair's leadership obstacle right now? She's trying to read her way through, think her way through. Talk to me about that.
Gosh, that's a great question. So I would definitely say not getting comfortable.
Okay.
Because, like I just mentioned, when you do bring in a good living, it's easy to kind of veer off of working as hard as you did in the beginning of your business because you have what you need, right? And don't get into manager mode and like, I'm going to be a manager of people, but to stay in the grind and continue working and showing people, what it takes to grow a business.
How do you keep yourself fresh then?
So that's a great question too. I think that the biggest thing is recognizing. So like when I have conversations with people, for example, there is a lovely couple that's just great that we met right before Byron was getting out of the Coast Guard, that he worked with the husband and they'd just gotten here. And the wife, I met her, we had him over for dinner just to welcome him and things like that. And nothing about the business whatsoever. But I kept hearing her say, I'm stressed out. I have these young kids, we have this. And I kept hearing these things. And I thought, gosh, if I threw in the towel, I would have nothing to offer her. And so that was like a wake-up call where I was like, I need to continue making sure when I hear these things and I hear a need and I have something that can help, that I'm offering that gift. Doesn't matter where I am in my life. If I feel like I'm too busy or we've got too much going on, if somebody needs it, I need to recognize that and share it. And I also have to recognize that I was doing too much for everybody. And it was taking away from the people that matter most in my life. That's probably the biggest cap, was I had to learn that balance piece. And you can't be everything to everyone. And it's so much better to build leaders versus a whole lot of followers. Yeah. And I would downplay things so much because I was afraid to put too much on people and not allowing them to grow into what they needed to be. And so I'd say my biggest obstacle is doing too much and recognizing other people need to be able to, we rise by lifting others, right? And so I needed to recognize what I want. My biggest goal needs to be finding people who are better at this than me and allowing them to be better than me.
Yeah. So what I hear in that is an intentionality to have conversations with people who are where you were.
Yep.
To remind you
absolutely
from where you've come, and to continue to offer assistance rather than just kind of moving. Often when people's income goes up, they hang with different people. They start doing different things and they lose touch with where they were, and they just lose that passion. They lose that desire to continue to help. So by just getting a chance to get to know new people and meet new people and listen to their heart, that she was struggling. Well, you remember that. You remember that felt like, and you can help. And then on the other end, continuing to intentionally hang around people who are better than you.
Exactly. It is a balance.
Because that pushes you to go, you know what? And there's still room to grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess that in the middle is where the kind of the death zone is, that comfortable zone where you get the money, you get the house, you get the food, you get the comforts, and you don't let anybody push you. And you stop hanging around the people down here that aren't too successful.
It's so easy to stay there.
And you just get stuck there. That's good. All right. Well, let's change the tone a little bit, and we'll wrap this up. And thank you so much for your transparency and your story. I'm hopeful that that's really going to inspire a lot of people. And right before we finish the interview, I asked kind of a little contact information, so if people want to get up with you or follow you on social media and things like that, they can.
Sounds great.
But this is the first time we've actually done this, so you're our first. Okay. I'm going to ask you some quick questions, and these are just about personal life, about who you are, and just first thought that comes to your mind. Okay. Tell us your favorite movie.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay. You watch that every year?
Every year. I even watch it when it's not on Christmas.
Okay. Is that a family tradition now with your kids?
It is. And it was because my grandmother and I were super close, and it was her favorite movie. So, we even had a dog named Bailey after George Bailey. Right. And I don't care if it's black and white. I love that movie. I can quote the whole thing.
Great. Favorite song?
Oh my gosh. Lisa Loeb, Stay.
Okay.
I used to listen to it in middle school on repeat.
And you still do?
Still do.
Okay.
My daughter sings it with me now.
Favorite meal?
Oh gosh. Mexican, 100%.
Never get tired of it.
Gosh, I love cheese.
Do you cook it at home too?
I do.
Yeah.
It's funny. At home, I cook it healthy. At the restaurant, I don't eat healthy.
Okay. Really? Yeah. All right. Here's a little bit more serious. If you could sit down with one person, past or present, and have a meal with them and just talk with them, whether they're alive today or have passed on, and you could still have that opportunity to sit down and talk, who would it be and why?
Gosh, like someone I knew or didn't know?
Doesn't matter. Anybody that you would have an opportunity to sit down and talk with.
My grandmother.
Okay. Yeah. And has she passed on?
She has.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you would want to sit down and just
I would just
her life story, and ask questions.
And I feel like I'm so much wiser now in life. I wasn't a mom yet. I wasn't a wife yet. And life for me is so much different than when I knew her. I would just, makes me want to tear up thinking about it. But having that time with her would be incredible,
Yeah, I know that feeling. My grandmother was extremely close to me, and she passed a few years ago, and I often can still hear her voice, and when she was taking care of me, I was a very different person than I am today, and I could have a much more mature conversation with her.
I know. It'd be crazy.
So I get that. Hey, what is your favorite word?
Oh. My gosh, I don't know if I've ever thought about that.
Yeah, most people don't, but it's words that we use a lot.
I think I say goodness gracious just about to everything.
Why?
I don't know. Both my grandmas said it, I guess. And I think instead of cursing.
Yeah. Okay. So it's your way of cursing.
So it comes out if I'm happy, excited, mad. Yeah. It comes out all the time.
Yeah.
My kids repeat it now.
What's your least favorite word? A word you hate?
Oh my gosh. I hate the word moist.
Okay.
Because it sounds gross.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And one more question. Describe for us your perfect day off.
Oh, perfect day off. I would love, my kids love being outside, beach, mountains, lake, whatever it is. But any of those things, doing a full day with my kids and my husband, it's not as fun if he's not there because he makes everything funnier. Yeah. Doing that. And then being able to go on a full kid-free date with my husband,
right,
and have that time at the end of the day.
Yeah. So that's a wonderful day with your kids.
Yep.
Until they are exhausted.
Exactly.
And then having a
hand them over to grandparents or
like
something.
with your husband, and just go out and have a nice day.
Yes.
And you would choose what restaurant?
Oh, gosh. So I said Mexican. I know.
I didn't know if you had a restaurant you guys go to. It's kind of like your restaurant.
Yeah, Maggiano's.
Oh my gosh.
They got the bread and the pasta. So yeah. Italian's my second
I'm an
favorite.
Italian
Yeah.
fan. So
And you can't go there with
Maggiano's
kids.
is beautiful. No. You
It's so
certainly
good.
won't enjoy it as much as you do. Well, this is great, Blair. Thank you so much for your time. What's the best way for people to get up with you? They're listening and go, I'd like to find out more about Blair.
I would say Instagram is super simple.
Okay.
Yep.
And what's
very
your
easy.
what's your
It's just Blair Proffit.
okay. Easy to find you there and follow you on Instagram. You post a lot on Instagram?
I do.
Okay.
I do. You'll see a lot of my kids, a lot of my life, and a lot of my business.
Okay, so it's all there.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, we'll try to link that also in the bottom there when we put the podcast out for people to follow you. Okay. So thanks again so much, and
No,
I'm
it
excited
was an
about
honor.
people following you and getting to know you.
Thank you.
Take care.